For anyone who has followed Formula One long enough to remember the era of Nelson Piquet's first title, seasons are rarely defined by a single moment, a single race, or a single flaw. They are shaped by an intricate tapestry of engineering choices, political wins, driver psychology, strategic calls, and the unspoken tensions inside teams that only those who have lived inside the paddock for decades truly understand. And when one looks at Max Verstappen's 2025 campaign, the central question becomes not simply why he failed to secure the title, but what was missing in a season where he still displayed the raw pace, racecraft, and unshakable aggression that have marked him as one of the defining drivers of his generation. To judge whether he deserved to be champion, one must look far beyond a final points tally and examine the deeper structure of a season that tested the limits of his talent, his team, and the very stability that had long powered Red Bull's dominance. The first factor that must be acknowledged is the shifting competitive landscape. The 2025 field was unlike any Verstappen had faced during his period of supremacy. Teams that had spent years in technical no man's land, Mercedes, McLaren, sometimes even Ferrari, arrived with packages that were not only quicker on single-lap pace, but frighteningly consistent across different circuits and climates. The aerodynamic puzzle of these regulations, which had become almost trivially easy for Red Bull's legendary technical director Adrian Newey in the early ground effect years, suddenly turned against them once stability was broken by internal politics, structural reshuffling, and the inevitable erosion of dominance that comes when a team spends too many seasons defending rather than innovating. For the first time in years, Red Bull did not have the fastest car on average. Verstappen, to his credit, repeatedly extracted performance that the machinery did not possess. But modern Formula One has always been unforgiving when the margins tighten. The era of one driver winning by 20 seconds simply by managing tires more efficiently was over. What was missing primarily was the margin of superiority Red Bull once enjoyed. The RB21 was still capable, still nimble in low-speed sections, and still gentle on tires at certain circuits, but it lacked stability on corner entry, precision on traction zones, and the aerodynamic flexibility needed to tame more abrasive tracks. Verstappen's style, deep braking, aggressive rotation, and surgical throttle application requires a car that obeys instantly. The 2025 chassis did not. Every lap, every practice session, every qualifying run, he was forcing performance out of an unstable platform. And while Verstappen is one of the few drivers on the grid capable of bending an imperfect car to his will, the physics of Formula One do not bend with him. A tenth lost here, a compromised corner there, and suddenly the razor-thin margins that decide championships disappear. Another critical dimension was the internal storm within Red Bull. Ever since the tensions between key personnel began spilling into public view in the previous seasons, political factions, disagreements about future direction, whispers of exits, power struggles, the organizational clarity that once defined a team evaporated. Formula One titles are won not merely with fast cars, but with unified structures, shared purpose, and the absolute alignment of technical, strategic, and managerial philosophy. Red Bull in 2025 was still powerful, still competitive, but no longer perfectly synchronized. Verstappen, outwardly calm, was nonetheless navigating an environment less stable than the one that had delivered his earlier dominance. Great champions are not immune to institutional turbulence. His season bore the mark of a driver carrying not only the burden of competition, but the weight of a team fighting itself. Then there is the question of strategy, an area where Red Bull, once the class of the field, found itself occasionally outmaneuvered. On several key Sundays, Mercedes and McLaren executed bolder, cleaner, or simply more precise race strategies. Verstappen, ever the fighter, compensated with daring overtakes and relentless pace. But Formula One championships are often lost, not in the grand battles, but in the subtle strategic duels invisible to the casual viewer. A poorly timed pit stop here, a misread tire window there, a suboptimal undercut attempt that leaves a driver trapped in traffic. The sum of these small errors becomes the arithmetic of defeat. Verstappen did not falter. The broader apparatus around him simply failed to achieve perfection often enough. Reliability, too, played a role. Even in an era where mechanical failure is far less common than in the days of Piquet or Prost, a handful of technical issues across a long season can tilt the balance entirely. Verstappen suffered more non-driver-induced setbacks than he had in previous seasons, and each retirement or compromised race removed critical points from his campaign. Championships are often lost on days when nothing spectacular happens, just quiet mechanical frustration. But there is a final, more philosophical question underpinning his 2025 campaign. Did Max Verstappen deserve to be champion? The word deserve in Formula One is always dangerous. The sport has never rewarded talent alone. It rewards machinery, preparation, organizational strength, and the convergence of countless variables beyond a driver's control. If deserving is measured in pure performance, then yes, many will argue that Verstappen drove at a championship level throughout the season. His racecraft remained clinical, his qualifying laps often miraculous, his mental resilience intact. Even under immense internal and external pressure, he demonstrated the rare capacity to extract pace where the car hesitated, to fight back when strategy faltered, and to maintain composure when others expected implosion. But if deserving means aligning all forces, technical, strategic, political, and circumstantial, then the narrative becomes more complicated. Others had strong packages. Others had more stable environments. Others capitalized better on the season's pivotal moments. Verstappen fought with brilliance, but brilliance alone is never enough in F1's merciless calculus. The title ultimately went to the driver and team who executed with the fewest weaknesses, not the greatest flashes of genius. So what was missing? A car that matched his driving philosophy, a team unburdened by political turbulence, a season free of reliability doubts, a strategic department operating at its previous peak. In essence, Max Verstappen needed the structural coherence that once made Red Bull unstoppable. What he delivered behind the wheel was worthy of a champion. But Formula One, as it always has since the era of Piquet, is a sport where the best driver does not always win the championship. Only the one with the best combination of speed, machinery, stability, and fortune. In 2025, Max Verstappen had 3 of the 4. And in Formula One, that is sometimes not quite enough.